Revolution to make sure that we got democracy in this country. Well, today starts the new American Revolution.
El día de hoy empieza la nueva revolución
To make
americana.
sure that we get our democracy back.
Que tomemos nuestra democracia nuevamente.
So, brothers and sisters, are you ready to stand up?
¿Están listos para levantarse?
Are you ready to fight?
¿Están listos para luchar?
Are you ready to march?
Yes, we can! Yes, we can! Yes!
Democracy awakening, they call it. Thousands of protesters massing in Washington. All over the country, Americans are fed up and rebelling against the politicians and the power brokers.
I believe that we will win!
Fighting against Citizens United.
We do not believe that corporations are people.
Voter suppression.
We will never stop battling.
Dark money.
The money was hopping from one nonprofit to another, all for the purpose of concealing donors.
Gerrymandering.
The real work on redistricting was being done behind closed doors.
Pressing for reform.
If this singing and these chants up on the Capitol steps remind you of the civil rights movement, it should. This is Americans protesting, in this case, against big money in politics, for voting rights, against gerrymandering, against a broken political system.
We are the 99%! We are!
But as I interview March leaders, I wonder, can it work? Can ordinary voters halt what many see as politicians rigging elections? Can citizen reformers stop the big money that they fear is dominating elections? It's happened before. We, the people, demanding our rights. A century ago in the progressive era, mass protests won women's right to vote. Direct election of senators. Congress outlawing corporate spending in elections. The 1960s, another rebellion. A grassroots movement challenging the power structure and winning change. Martin Luther King and the March on Washington. Selma, Alabama, and the fight for black voting rights. Today, partisan gridlock blocks change in Washington. And so once again, the grassroots are riled up and rising up, state by state. It's the kind of story I've seen before. In the 1960s, I covered the civil rights protests in the Deep South, reported on the Vietnam War in Saigon, the Cold War and Gorbachev's perestroika from Moscow, and covered 6 American presidents. Today, the states are where the action is on reform. So it's time for me to get out into the country to take the measure of the new wave of grassroots rebellions. First stop, Seattle. Puget Sound, the famous Pike Street Market. I find people gathering for picnic lunch. Fishmongers draw a crowd tossing salmon. It's a peaceful, sunny September day. But rebellion is brewing.
So what we're doing today is we're going to cover the market.
A band of volunteers have come to galvanize support for a statewide vote on an initiative to curb billionaire and corporate money in political campaigns, hoping to pressure Congress to take action.
Primarily, we're targeting voters that don't know about our initiative, because you know the recent polling showed 36% are undecided.
It's Initiative 735.
Great, thank you.
We need to put the power of the vote back into the hands of the people so that the wealthy entities will no longer have a pipeline.
Linda Bach is a modern Paul Revere, awakening the popular rebellion. She collected 21,000 signatures to help put Initiative I-735 on the 2016 ballot.
I've long had the idea that I am continuing the American Revolution. Every signature I get is just another check for the Constitution and the power of we the people. Democracy, you must fight for it or it'll slip right out of your hands.
Fear that mega money is corrupting our democracy has turned average Americans like Cindy Black into reformers.
I definitely think the Supreme Court decision of Citizens United has unleashed so much money in our system that it's ceased being a democracy, and now we've turned into an oligarchy.
In the Citizens United decision in January 2010, the Supreme Court overturned a century-old ban on corporate political spending.
And ruled that corporations can spend freely now on political campaigns.
Justice John Paul Stevens dissented. Corporations, he said, already have political action committees, but allowing them unlimited use of their vast treasuries, he warned, unleashes the floodgates. Stevens was prophetic. Suddenly, unregulated campaign spending by independent political groups shot up from $8 million in 2009 to $301 million in 2010 to $1.4 billion in the 2016 election.
Changing the Constitution is a big step.
In reaction to the Citizens United decision, Senate Democrats pushed for a constitutional amendment to restore the power of Congress to regulate campaign spending, but party-line Republican opposition blocked the move.
Affirmative. The motion is not agreed to.
Money talks, baby, money talks!
So reformers shifted to the states. Several legislatures called on Congress to roll back Citizens United. 800 cities joined. In Colorado and Montana, 74% bipartisan supermajorities voted against Citizens United. In Washington state, volunteer activist Cindy Black leads the charge for ballot initiative 735.
And just by a show of hands, how many of you collected signatures for 735 out there? Give everybody a round of applause, those folks, because we collected 293,000 of our signatures were collected by volunteers. So I have never run a campaign before. I'm really a grassroots organizer. I was in the Air Force. I was a crew chief, and then I went to college. I was a marriage and family therapist for quite a few years, and then running my own business.
Black is the spark plug of a statewide citizen movement.
Your country back.
We're trying to get our citizens, our voters on record saying that we do not believe that corporations are people, we do not believe that money is speech, and that we think that political contributions should be regulated and made public.
But others, like corporate investment analyst Kelly Houghton, sharply disagree.
I do not want to touch the First Amendment. And this effort, I-735, seeks to restrict the freedom of speech of certain groups of people who've come together to form corporations. Citizens United was quite simply a corporation formed for the purpose of engaging in political speech in the form of a movie that Hillary Clinton didn't like.
If our forefathers really believed that corporations were people, I think they would have put that in the Constitution, and it is nowhere to be seen.
Voting on this issue, would you like to...
Okay, they want to censor corporate speech. Let's think about all the things out there that are corporations. Seattle Times, the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, the New York Times, CNN, Fox News. We cannot afford, as a country, to censor corporations engaging in free speech.
We do not want anything to limit free speech for the press or freedom of the press, not at all. What we're talking about is limiting money in elections.
Let's give a round of applause for Spokane!
Black has a statewide network of volunteers from the Idaho border to the Pacific coast.
It's not about left or right. I don't care if you're a Democrat, Republican, or other. We just want government that represents you, not the big briefcase full of money.
But how can amateurs win without big funding? I've talked to professional politicians in this state. They say it takes $3 million to run a successful political campaign in Washington State. You don't have $3 million.
No.
So what's it take to win? You're in a big state here, Washington State.
We talk to people. That's how we're doing it. Contact. Direct voter contact, person to person.
Please tell your friends and family.
Okay. You can pass an initiative with a grassroots effort with a small budget. We can do it.
And they did it. 63% of Washington state voters rejected Citizens United and unlimited corporate money in campaigns. It takes 34 states to force Congress to act on a constitutional amendment. 20 states are now on record against Citizens United. Getting 14 more is the next challenge.